But without further ado, I'll let Hideki introduce himself and give us a fun fact.
All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today, this morning. And all sort of wisdom said if you wake up early, you can get a couple of things. I just made that. But it's very important to wake up early morning, start your day early. Okay, so that's today's the day. I have very limited time today, meaning it's 1 hour, so we have to leave here before 9 o'clock. And I want to make this very interactive session rather than just showing PowerPoint slides. You know, this is more drug school type session. It's not just PowerPoint slide. Interaction is very important. And I have seen many of you in my class 10 years ago, over 10 years ago. So I have to show up today that I'm growing still. Okay, I'm still alive and I'm kicking. So that's why the topic is not just strategy that I normally teach, but design strategy and contextual strategy. But I just want to give you my punchline first, which is design thinking, design strategy is important. As you know, IDEO and other companies are examples. But I would say it's important also, contextual strategy is also important. So both things are important. That's my punchline today. To learn new things is very important, but also don't forget the old wisdom. That's kind of my point. All right, let's just kind of start this session, starting from this slide. First 3 slides are kind of quotes from very important work. Do you remember Joseph Schumpeter? Those who took the Drucker's class, probably he mentioned several times. Schumpeter is from Austria, from Wien. Schumpeter so influenced Drucker very because of his connection to Drucker's father, Hamilton. And Schumpeter a long time ago said, entrepreneur is a person who creates new combination, the one who sees how to fulfill currently unsatisfied needs. That's very important. Even we talk about where we sell our product, what is the unsatisfied needs? The big question is how to find these unsatisfied needs. Schumpeter was easy, so say, okay, you have to find unsatisfied needs, but where is coming from? So that's one big question for us, for agenda number 1. Now go to our very familiar territory. Peter Drucker says, 2002, innovation is a specific function of entrepreneurship. Now he defines what is entrepreneur does. You remember, it could be in existing business. We always talk about these as startups, IT sector, but don't forget, even in existing business or even in government, you can be entrepreneur, right? That's very important for us to remind. Peter Drucker reminded us. So now I have 2 slides here. One is Schumpeter says, what's innovation? Identifying new needs or unsatisfied needs or new combination to deliver that. And what is entrepreneur does? That's innovation. Innovation can be done anywhere. All right? Another one. This is kind of less known, but important for us today, this morning, when I talk about design. Successful innovators use left and right side of brain. I don't know which one, but the left side, right? Okay. One side you normally use for analysis, or analytical sort. The other one is more intuitive side. But he said important to use both sides. Because if you look at this only left side, you become just an analytical person. But key is to use other side so that you can see the people. That's very important for us, right? At the end of the day, people is our attention, the focus, right? So just I show these 3 important slides. So today, next 50 minutes, we will look at these 3 things. Of course, I decided, I talked about design, but moving to design thinking, we have to cover a couple of things more important than just design, right? So that's why agenda number 1. Number 2 is pretty much Drucker, things. The third one is a new idea, so I just want to express that out. All right, now interactive. Most of you, or everybody graduate from Drucker School. So please tell me what Drucker said about sources of innovation. If you cannot answer, you have to return your degree. Okay? 7 sources of innovation he clearly identified in his article of 2002 Harvard Business Review. What are those? Nobody remembers? Science? So this is a good time for you to come here back and brush up your memory. Anybody? Yes, okay, go ahead.
One of the sources is what's happened before. You look around and see where are the shoulders of the giants that I'm standing on, where there's opportunities that somebody's already led the way.
Okay, good. All right, that's one. Good.
Rapid acceleration of internet tools like Ubers and Airbnbs that enables.
So we'll look at examples, right?
I
So
think
that goes much deeper.
what's
Why?
enabling for innovation?
Okay. Let's just look at this one. Unexpected occurrences. Something happened without expectation. His example, Ford Mustang, Member 3 and OSI, all those bad examples, everybody knows. Incongruity, something doesn't fit well. Something wrong, but that's an example Uber, right? The Uber's founder was standing in Paris, lots of cars driving, no taxi coming. What's happened? So many cars driven by the one person, and then why I don't have a taxi? So that's kind of incongruities.
Well, there's an incongruity in the way that people talk about innovation. Because my wife and I just watched the Steve Jobs documentary last night. Jobs was famous for saying, I don't care what customers think, because if I ask them, all they want is a better calculator or some better version. And yet, then later in the documentary, it shows them taking apart, before they built the iPod, all these existing music players and saying, these are horrible, we can make these better. And then inventing iMusic. And so he says on the one hand, it doesn't matter, but he still starts with an existing product that sucks and then finds a way to make it better. And then when you go to the iPhone, it's not, it's something else entirely. So but it's a combination of things that have come before. So even these radical innovations, the whole documentary is about how it's changed our lives. It's still this mix of all these things, and it's in weird mixes too. You don't, there's a piece of it. I think this empathy piece is what design thinking brings in that Peter didn't talk about very much, but it's this demographic changes and being sensitive to that demographic change and empathetic to where users are, potential customers maybe, in ways they don't even know they're frustrated, that they want something to happen. That's the part that the magic happens because you don't, and then you change their perception.
Yeah.
The device itself changes your perception.
So all these combinations happen,
Yeah.
right? It's important, right? So this is kind of important for us again. Go back to these basics, incongruities. One of the examples I got from the Kennedy Leadership Institute museum directors. I mean, museums traditionally did not allow customers or viewers to take photos. It's kind of incongruities. But suddenly now they decided, okay, you can take the photos. So suddenly young people start enjoying going to the museum, take the photos together, selfies. This kind of change based on something, what if this happens, what is going to happen? Kind of things, which is very important for us to become very innovative. Process needs, there are many companies, okay? Typical example, apparel industry, still we're doing that. Well, before the season, 1 year prior, 1 year, 18 months before, you make a design, and then you make production, and then you ship to the retail store before the season begins. But because of all this process, by the end of year or after Christmas, all the inventory piles up, and then start the markdown. So this is the old system, right? But now Zara came from Spain, Inditex, now decided to change the system, or at least they implement it. Well, what if we can design in season and then bring the new product in season? And it's become very innovative, and the Intex becomes the one of the largest apparel company in the world. So it's kind of a process change. Industry market change, again, there's so many examples here, right? Book, say, retail. Remember before Barnes & Noble Borders was there. Before that, it was embedded. So the stores, Amazon came, all these other small bookstore, even the Borders disappeared. But now actually changes is if you go to large cities, independent bookstores are emerging because Amazon cannot deliver everything. So there's a kind of something track going on. But also the important thing is, this is another topic I'm going to look at. Right? If people start looking outside of your own industry, how can we tap into the other industry, which is not our original industry, but there will be something good going on from outside of the industry. Of course, demographic changes. Peter Drucker was very strong on this, and changes in perception. Electric cars. Everybody knows after Tesla, perception changed. Right? Before that, electric, I don't like that kind of thing. But now, people totally change, or it's going to change the perception. That's very important. All right, new knowledge, yes. So this is a kind of very good starting point of where can we find some opportunities. And always good is to start from here. All right, rather than spending too much on this, let's go to the second, which already somebody mentioned about. Future have already happened. Key is, from Drucker perspective, you have to manage, identify the future that has already happened and manage it. That's very important. Again, it's easy to say, for me to say, but very difficult to do that. So that's the kind of thing you have to remember this from Peter's writing. Identify the changes that have already happened in society, economics, politics, and cultural thing. It's very important to find. Let me use a couple of examples here so that you can get an idea of what I'm talking about here. This kind of framework I'm kind of using most recently in my classroom. Let's look at these at least 5 elements. You can add more here and what have happened in your industry or your factory. But again, it's important to know that all these changes affect several layers. One is global factor. At the global level, changes may have happened already. Particularly your field of industry. It could be very industry specific, it could be very field specific. But also, it could be nation specific, meaning, well, this is China specific change, or this could be US change. Okay, so you have to sorting out what is going on where, and then that eventually affects the perception, all these things that the customer face. So that's kind of big framework, but instead of starting from here is probably very important. Let me give you a couple examples here. Let's go back all the way to 1940s and 50s. Suppose you are working for car manufacturers in, say, 1945, after World War II, and Peter asks you, what are the changes, by the way, that future that have already happened, 1945? Mark, what do you think? What happened in 1945? Back in classrooms, so cold talk, I would say that.
European offerings.
Yeah, you were all European makers. In 1945, and Peter Drucker asked you, what change happened? What is the future?
What change have already happened?
Yeah.
So just thinking about the war,
Yeah.
I would say maybe what changed is exports.
Exports.
For example, the Volkswagen showed up in the United States.
Okay, so why exports?
The method of transportation may have changed?
Method of transportation change means a fundamental change in the market. So that might be expo mean you see something going on in the market worldwide. Okay, where somebody question that.
Unused manufacturing capacity because you're not making tanks and airplanes anymore. You have facilities in which you can make them. You have people, soldiers returning from home who are coming home with families who need a new
Okay,
means of
shift
transportation.
your manufacturing capability.
Yeah, so you have both the change of market needs and demand, as well as capacity to produce at a
Right.
reasonable price, and the ability to export, as he said, by shipping at that point.
Good, okay, so supply side.
And then for the Americans' benefit, that after the war, we weren't as bombed as heavy as Europe, so we gained an advantage because we had the manufacturing. So therefore,
Right.
we gained a big advantage.
Yeah, it would lead in because also there was a lot of capability in manufacturing that destroyed. So there was a lot of new tooling and new creation of machinery.
Right, okay. This,
On top of that, there's a lot of R&D done by militaries to create better war machines that would turn into automotive.
okay,
We introduced women into the workforce. I think the numbers were about a third of people in the United States anyway were in manufacturing after World War II and steadily declined, about 8%.
so it's good, but I hear more from supply side view. How you mentioned about yes, capacity, supply, new technology. So what's the biggest change here? War is over. That means peace is back in Europe. Okay, now soldiers are back to home, and the new life begins. You see the future. So what's the future like in Europe in 1945?
Recover economically.
Recover economically, meaning any change in demographics here? What's going to happen in your country? Recovery. Very good, right? So very good means more people need a car because the baby is born, right?
Bigger cars.
Right, so this is kind of important. This is important, right? We tend to look at from supply side, but again, don't forget supply side. Just don't forget demand side too. Okay, that's why I just put this slide. Opportunity is emerging mass market in Europe. So your framing question now is this one. Build small. This is Europe, right? Not US. Small utilitarian because baby boom is coming. Efficient because still the gas is expensive, inexpensive, still recovery state, but then gradually disposal income going down, going up, reliable, powerful, emerging. Very important, right? The changing, you have to identify the changes that have already happened and manage. And then, of course, invest in your supply, side story, capacity, technology. But then design question here is what will the design like? How to solve this frame issue? So what I'm showing here is design thinking is new parameters to the business school, but has been going for many, many years, right? So that's the kind of here. This is from the picture from original sales brochure from Volkswagen. Okay. Story is important here. 4 young people, this right side, looking at someone like 2 couples. So this is really future, right? Now the peace arrived. Now young couple can safely start to enjoy their life. So if you want to have that aspirational life, buy this stuff. This kind of message. Right? So let's go to that. This one, which country is? France. Switzerland. Right? So how many kids here? 1, 2, 3, 4 children. Baby boom, right? 4 children and parents. And they have to fit in this car. Okay? The solution is very different from the German solution and the French solution in terms of engineering. This is Italy. Again, it shows a story.
5 people in that car.
And it's left side, left side is a mother or probably father, right? So 5 people have to sit between this small car. We have to think, but that's a car that is a car Fiat wants to sell. So different, right? This is the original Mini. This is the UK, all right? So the advertising said you can drive this car to commute your business every day, but you can go to circuit to enjoy weekend, right? Different solutions, but different design. And again, important thing, these are design icon now. Volkswagen, Fiat, Mini, all reincarnated. But still the original is better in the some part.
It sort of brings to mind too, at that time, one of the big fans was how many people you could stuff in a VW. And they would have pictures all over the place.
Yeah. All right.
So in Japan, they're making what, little Toyota?
Toyota, yeah, right.
The Japanese have a similar pattern post-war.
Right.
Start small.
That's right. All right, so this is a good starting point. Say, look at this one. This is still, we're looking at current. We're talking about mid-2000s, so 10 years ago. Setting. He asks the same question. Oh, you are the carbon fractures. What are the future you're going to look at? What are the future that have already happened?
Efficiency.
Hmm?
Yeah, the growing attitude that, you know, I'm not sure they're doing electric as much as we are, but they're looking for ways to produce cars that use either no gas or very little gas and a lot of electronics and so on.
Leveling off of birth rates.
Okay. Right.
Lower demand everywhere. but
Lower
China.
demand everywhere, right? So that means new generation. Baby boomer is reaching to that sort of height of disposable income. You have to look at millennials. Are they going to buy cars, or they don't buy? So that's a big question. But still, you have to look at opportunities, and then eventually here. Framing question for them was small, still inexpensive, small, inexpensive, because they may not buy a car, expensive car. Efficient, reliable, zero emission for global mass market.
And now you're to pay for use, not pay for owning.
Yep. So this is, right, so this is still they're working on that, and one cute car here. This is actually Renault Zoe. It's very nice looking car, sold already in France, and maybe coming eventually from Nissan in here, but it's kind of interesting. This is all electric car. All right, so then I gave you 2 examples here, and a couple more examples in the shifter here. Since I did the work in Germany, give you some example here about the future that has happened. 1950s, 80s, as you everybody knows, Germany has grown very rapidly, significantly. And here is important their system. A couple important part is, yes, there are capitalism, but importance placed on social aspect. Labor relations, co-determination, works council, job protection laws very important. And then also skill formation is very important. Their product, very complex, customized, specialized product. Yet their competitive advantage was called middle size, small, middle size, family or company. So that was the story in 1950s through 1980s. But time, of course, changed. And then Chinese competitor, Japanese competitor came into the market. Then German company realized that, well, we have to do something, particularly how to upgrade this mixture. Small, medium size, highly customized, highly efficient, highly sort of engineered company, how to be competitive. At the same time, society is aging, This is kind of the situation the company has. What is the future that has already happened? How to solve our problems? It's a very important question, not just for Germany, for many other countries. Japan faces the same situation now, but even some of the US companies face the same thing. What do you do? You're the founder, manager of your family business, being very good in 1960s, 70s, 80s, and now face tough competition. You have to revitalize your company. And lots of competitors around the world, right? What do you do?
Take partnership agreements and sort of expand by not building yourself, but including others in
Others,
in
so
the vision.
others.
Other companies that are doing similar things that you can focus your expertise, then use their expertise.
Their experts. All right, so this is good. Look outside of your industry to find some partner who has capability to complement your capability. So that's probably a good way. So now what's that? What's that? So that's kind of big question everybody face. And then what they came up is, yes, of course, is they call what? Industry 4.0. Industry 1.0 is the internal combustion engine. Industry 2.0 is mass production. 3.0, electronics, and let's say 4.0. Typically, what they call is Internet of Things. Some company, like Kuka is one of the largest robot manufacturers. Together with Switzerland ABB, came up some robotics, which uses sensor and internet, so that they can customize their product based on all the information gathered from sensor and then offer service. Right? So that's a very important aspect. And then after that, software cluster technologies in West Berlin, and that's very new. So this is the companies. The key here is given national specific situation, they have to solve the issues and work together with partners outside the industry and come up with new products. And now it's become more and more leader of the industry. So what happened here is this is a traditional value chain, and now they are looking at this one. But this is already have happened. Now they're looking at further beyond. That's the situation you have to understand. So when you train company like Robert Bosch, that's one of the largest automotive product supplier, as well as the tools, electric tools, now moving into this new trend to use their own sensor to come up with the product. Those who live in work in Europe, big cities, it's always difficult to find parkways. A lot of people the garage, so every time you come home, there's no place to park on the street. So what the Bosch is trying to do is, if they can use a sensor to tell car drivers where is parking spot near your home, something like that. So this kind of sensor, and then get information, and then gives you the information to that your driver. So combining manufacturing and then internet, new trend, it already happened. Okay, so there's a new thing probably coming. Again, this is based on country specific, global specific, as well as industry specific example. Okay. Now it's a kind of important here, right? Outside, it's very important. Quite often we come from outside, not necessarily from inside. Look at the last example of this future outside of that future that has happened is the industry-specific example here. Of course, everyone knows that, but they also face challenges. So this probably know what it is. Some of you probably go often to meet people, do some business over there, and Panera Bread has more space. You can eat lunch more comfortably than Starbucks. So this is one of the competitors. Of course, those who are coming from Pasadena may have been this place, like this. Morning breakfast they can serve, and the daytime coffee, but evening becomes this wine bar, something like that. That's a hyper-local competitors, yes. And then if you go outside of the country, Costa Coffee, this is from UK, right? Second largest coffee chain in the world. And the picture, this food is not in UK, this is in France. So Costa Coffee already moved into France. And this airport, Charles de Gaulle has a big coffee island in the past. And it is probably you recognize this logo, which is from Italy, right? And they started operating all these stores. And those who from the Bay Area, New York, or Santa Monica probably not noticed this one. Idea came from Japan, drip style coffee. There are many of those in Japan, so now we're moving up. But also other competitors like Nestle's Nespresso. There's a store in Newport, Fashion Island, and also Beverly Hills. You can drink coffee. It's not just buying cups. You can drink coffee over there. It just kind of start. This is in Milano, in Italy, Nespresso, one of the most successful store over there, right? So, bunch of competition, and then again, industry changing. That is very important. Those who are familiar with the prototype industry, sort of the analysis, have some issue of using that to look at just snapshot. But if you use that as to illustrate changing structure of particular industry, it's still very useful. There are lots of going on. The key is if you're a manager, as everybody here do, you have to identify the changes that have happened and then manage. So this is a very industry-specific case. That's why it's very good detail, right? For example, in Orange County, Starbucks has issue with this kind of store, boba tea stores. Because of the Asian American population, they drink boba tea, very sweet, but it is very sort of growing over there. And some of you wonder what are those, but that's kind of very important to see this was happening like that. All right, and then also the servers, many U.S. servers, Starbucks are very known that drive-through. It's like a McDonald's. It's no longer the catering to the innovators or the doctors. Those are not going to the group to the border coffee. So kind of important things here is changes again. You have to identify changes and do something. All right, so I gave the example here, global change, country-specific change, and the industry-specific change, all this combination of these changes. And the Drucker says, key is to identify those changes and then manage. Okay, so that's a very important thing. Notice? Yes, first is
Minecraft.
yes, okay, so that's good. This side is quiet, but he said that's already show this market here, okay? That if you ask 10 years old kids, if you have a son or daughter or granddaughter, ask them, their response is, oh, we don't play anymore. Why is company selling all this character good last Christmas? We graduated. Microsoft purchased this company last year from Swedish startups, huge amount of money. They, put up all the money into the market, but young kids don't play anymore because they played this game 4 years ago, 3 years ago. They graduated. So this is a big change already, very quick speed, and you have to understand that change already. Okay? So my question here, what's the change?
see.
The maker movement.
I'm sorry.
The maker movement. It's a movement, it's happening,
Okay.
and people want to return to making
Okay.
in their own place.
All right. So it's important. I think. Yes.
For ours, there's a regulation change that's gonna wipe out advisors working with Middle America, it's gonna be high net worth clients. Because everything's gonna be fee-based.
So regulation leads to new sort of paradigm.
Yeah, I mean, for Middle America, it's gonna mostly be online with no specific, no client-specific strategies. It's gonna all be mass-produced. I mean, we're gonna have true lives. There's gonna be a network that can produce.
Good. Thank you. Anybody?
Disability, we're constantly having to make new ways of making the same things happen or finding a new normal. If sometimes it's just vestibular. If you're losing your balance constantly, then you find another way. And so we have a board member who decided to make a neuronymbalizer. And all it is like the white cane only returned to blue, so that we have another point for our brain to realize that we can still get around and focus on our environment rather than focusing on, am I gonna fall down?
In the food industry, you've had a lot of things happen. For example, organic, natural, labor costs are going up in fast food and things like that. So you probably will see more automation.
Right.
So I think a lot of companies will be struggling because of labor costs.
Okay. Yes.
Omnichannel, big data analytics.
Big data analytics. Yes.
To take data from multiple sources, analyze it rapidly, and respond to consumers in real time.
Oh yeah, we're business brokers. A lot of people buy and sell businesses. So a lot of the baby boomers want to retire. A lot of them are in small businesses.
Yeah, that's a big change also. Yes. Okay. Right. Now the customer set totally changes. That's great.
In medicine now, the provider or the service is getting squeezed by data collection, payment problems, all of these things that are happening, plus the legal stuff, and it changes the whole attitude of how the product is delivered. Technically, not biologically.
Right. Okay. Good. Yes.
Massive open online courses are replacing university lectures with mass customization. So you take the class for free, why should I pay for it at college? Or I could take it for free, and if I like it, I'll do an assignment and get credit.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody? Others? All right, so that's good. Yes. Go ahead.
Globalization, I mean, the commodities market with metal, and how China is dumping and Brazil is dumping, and that challenge of figuring that out, and whether it's duties or open trade, that balance and dealing with that.
Right.
I don't have an answer, I just have a problem.
Right. Good. Actually, it's important here. Everybody knows that that changes somehow really big change. Some of them can be managed, but some are really fundamental change. So that's very important to notice. Yes.
I have a national political example. Peter always said, if you want to know what's going to happen in the U.S. 20 years from now, look at California or Los Angeles. 20 years ago, California had a gridlocked legislature. Nothing was getting done. They weren't passing budgets, and now it's all of the statewide offices are Democratic, and the Republican demographic is shrunk. And we're seeing that identical pattern now in Congress. So if I apply Peter's logic, what's happening in California is we've got a predominantly Democrat. The demographics changed. So I'm sort of predicting based on that. The politics, national politics will shift, and we'll have a situation very much like California is now 20 years from now. I mean, we're in that shift now.
Good. All right. Let me just move on because we have another 20 minutes or so. All right. This is kind of footnote. All right, but important footnote. Sushi, everybody probably knows. We are in California, but this is original version of roll, invented in Japan. Look very carefully at this picture. Details matters here. Okay. So first of all, inside top part. Here is tuna, and this is a cucumber. See the position of seaweed outside. Okay? Of course, in California, we are very innovative. Okay? 40 years ago, somebody came up with new idea, innovation. California roll. Why this happens? The reason was that particularly tuna fish, raw tuna fish was not really popular. So it was not easy to buy for sushi restaurant to buy raw tuna fish back then. So they have to use substitutes. Okay? Substitute was, remember, fake crab meat, right? And so they also come up with, instead of Japanese cucumber, avocado. Green, it's the same color, so why not have avocado? This is California, right? So, and then innovation here is inside out, meaning seaweed is inside, not wrapping. Okay? So this is a California roll. But then came another innovation. This is purely US invention. This is called the spider roll. Okay? And then caterpillar roll, and all these whole range of these rolls embedded in here. Okay. Now this moved in different country. This is restaurant in Paris called Planet Sushi. They have their own innovation. One is foie gras roll. Ingredient is foie gras, right? Goose. And they deliver everywhere you live in the province. They deliver sushi in Paris. Okay? It's a chain store. We talk about Paris, right? And the main key sort of the segment is the younger generation, age, upper teens and 20s, early 30s. Now, they decided to go to Japan to eat original sushi. Thing is, these people, even young California people, have had no original Japanese sushi ever before. Their imagination is, yes, sushi is this one. Sushi is this one from French people. So last 3-4 years, in Japan, in Tokyo, there are huge wave of tourists from outside of Japan. Knock the door of sushi restaurant. Do you have a caterpillar roll? Do you have the original, the spider roll? The sushi master says, go up. That was 5 years ago. Okay. But they keep coming back. All these generation young people keep coming back, including from China, Taiwan, Korea, Singapore, and all this, right? So now what happened? Japanese restaurant, I took this photo actually, chain from Tsukiji Fish Market, had this small note written in English. We serve rolls. Okay, this is kind of tiny example, but this is true globalization, right? And finding needs for potential customers. It's kind of interesting example here, starting from here, all over the world, coming back here, and then finally they change their menu. Right? So this is one of the most traditional, very reluctant to the changes. But the wave of globalization, they cannot sort of do that anymore. Right? So I'm going to just footnote. Yes?
Yeah, quick question. I think earlier you tied the invention of the California rule to the idea that the products and from a supply side, they weren't able to gather certain materials. Whereas, wouldn't it potentially be from the demand side? So the sophistication level, the people that were purchasing it, you didn't have Californians back 20, 30 years ago that were comfortable with eating raw fish. So that's the whole idea of why California rolls became popular. And then as the sophistication level grew of the people that were consuming it, that's when you move to the specialized rolls. Whereas now, like amongst my friends, we won't even go eat at a Korean sushi place. We'll only, the longer the list of rules that a sushi place has, the more we like it. No tempura, no teriyaki, no soda, no to go. That kind of sets the benchmark for what we're looking at. So would that be like a corollary explanation of
Right,
how.
yeah. Correct. That's right. Yeah, this one, yeah.
But do Japanese customers of this sushi bar in Japan wouldn't order that stuff, I'm guessing. That would
They
take
were
a
right. So
while.
it's starting with a segmented market emerges.
Yeah.
Those restaurants cater to sort of global customers. Very traditional Japanese restaurant. Yeah.
My son is a photographer in San Francisco, and on the transportation portion of it, he's with a startup called Adobe's, and they deliver fresh baked cookies in 20 or 30 minutes. And that has to do with a regulatory change where people can sell their products from baking at home up to $50,000. So I think they happened 3 years ago. So I don't know if that's a copycat from that. Maybe.
Okay, good. All right, so now is finally our main topic. So now, those are already set up. Okay, so this main topic very go quick. Okay, so now this is important part actually. You know, we start jumping into the design thinking, oh, we have to use the design thinking. But my approach, probably the drug approach this one, is you have to have all these things before you do all the design thinking. Have to understand what innovation comes, have to understand what's happening in the world, what other future has happened already. Without that framework, it is a big kind of, you lose sort of access point. You have to know where you're going, what is the issue you face, okay? Those who took my strategy 10 years ago, remember positioning strategy, okay? This goes back to Porter's 1980 type, and let's give you a starting point, take one exercise here. Everybody knows this company. If you work for a corporation, in your own company, you have to supply this coffee machine, industrial coffee machine, number one, right in the market. I just put this, okay, quality, economy, luxury segment, however defined like this one. So now you face Nespresso phone, Nescafe. You know, it's kind of more high end, high quality. So if you're a startup using old traditional prototype competitive strategy framework, still good. Where you put your company to compete against these two?
It's gonna be up by Nespresso.
Up, high.
Yeah, by Nespresso.
By espresso. So means around here.
Yeah, right about
Could be
there.
here, like that here. All right.
You know what, actually, I put it, I don't know what Nespresso charges.
Okay.
I'm gonna assume Starbucks charges more.
So around here. Okay.
So I put it.
Good. Okay.
What product are we talking about? The coffee machine?
Coffee
or the-
machine, yeah. Domestic cold coffee machine.
Well, if everybody's going right, you might want to think about a segment that's going left.
Okay, so all right. So if everybody goes here, we should go this side. Anybody?
My brother.
Here.
Yeah, see, I have a problem with that,
Okay.
which is that, if you look at positioning in the original, as Trout and Reese originally developed the concept, Starbucks has a position, okay? And if they move too far to the left, they're gonna violate their own position.
Okay.
and
You
create
violate their
conflict of
position.
dominance in consumers'
Okay.
So
Good.
can we add another dimension? What about sustainability?
Okay.
Corey's got really raised low on that, like negative, because you throw away the cartridges.
Mhm.
And I don't know where Nespresso is on that. Are they also a cartridge-based system?
Right.
So both of these are off the charts bad for the environment.
And the life of the brewer is short too, I've discovered.
So my brothers bought these ones where they grind the beans and
Yeah.
do everything right on
Yeah.
site. So I just dump the coffee and the water in, and it goes from there. So there's if you switch to a different set of dimensions, then you ask different questions about.
After question.
So the innovation opportunity may not be on this
You're
scale.
right.
You've got to innovate on a different
Different
value.
Keurig though has, that fits that, they have individual cups where you can grind your own beans, put it into it, and reuse that cup over and over again. Now it makes a mess, and I don't know.
I have one in my office.
But I'm saying, it
There are
is
coffee
there.
grounds all over my
Yeah,
office
it is
now.
there,
It's
I
a
mean,
cloud.
putting it into the little cup is
Yeah,
good,
yeah.
but
Oh, yeah.
it does exist,
I
it's
switched
not
to drip.
widely used.
Well, the problem with that is the fact that it goes against what Keurig designed at the beginning.
Right.
Its appeal was the fact that it came in this little cup, but now, I mean, there's countries that are completely doing away, they won't even allow Keurigs because of the sustainability issue. But now,
That
more and
concept
more,
was in Europe years ago, we used to have a conference room all over those little pods.
I like really our graduate. You know, I show this map. This is the map. You start talking everything, right? I don't have to do anything. Right, left, up, down, the third dimension. This is very important, right? This is a discussion. Yes.
So when you go into the espresso store in Paris, it's totally labor intensive, right? Bam, 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 and you get this little piece of coffee.
Right.
Where does that fit up here? High quality, high
Oh,
cost.
okay, right. Yeah. Okay. So that's another dimension, right?
Very, it inhibits.
Right. Very good. Okay. So this is kind of the whole point of showing this one. All right. So it could be this, it could be this, it could be this.
Yeah.
This is a typical positioning problem issues here. How do we do this? Eventually, you have to come up with something new, right? Okay.
just on the note of what you're talking about, and I'm, just for transparency, I'm a huge Starbucks fan, okay? Organizationally, not from necessarily a being standpoint, but organizationally. That's how they're positioning right there on three different segments right now, because they have, within the framework of their organization, they've got your store that you can go to real quick. I don't have time because I got kids screaming, but now I know that there's drive-thrus, which are recent over the past 5 years. They've got sustainable building now with container stores, because people will go to a container store because it's new. They have their roastery now, which is the premium. It's like Willy Wonka for coffee lovers. And then they also have now they're serving alcohol and food. I think there's one up in Calabasas. So they are doing just that. So you have multiple options. So you got college kids who go right up the street on Foothill. They don't have to worry about this Willy Wonka experience or the wine and dine. But then you go to Calabasas, where that's going to hit that market very well. And then in Seattle, Los Angeles, New York, you've got the roasteries, where it's more of the experience, and then they have literally a store where you can buy shirts, bags, and you don't even have to touch coffee. So I think the challenge is for those that aren't interested, because the espresso might not even be interested in hitting more than 1 point on that chart. They just might want to stick to that 1 point, no different than the AeroPress. Because the AeroPress cornered the market really successfully. It's labor intensive, but it puts it on you. So it's not like it's very cost effective. It's just time consuming. But that point is not going to change on that. Whereas Starbucks is smart because they're striking different areas to balance out what their entire strategy is.
But Nestle's already in the economy of quality. That company that owns Nespresso is already all over the map with other products. So.
Right, on the products, not the other. Not necessarily the same product.
With coffee, it's the long tail. There's no big hits anymore. If you go to, here's the product, here's the one way to do it, here's the Starbucks, that's the global giant. Or if you go downtown in Claremont, you might say, yeah, some people go to Starbucks. But even if you talk to the people in the city of Claremont, if they're on city council, they don't go into Starbucks. They go to that other place that's packed. Some place that you have to stand there for 20 minutes or 30 minutes just to get in their small little space. So I think the long tail, is that Chris Anderson? There's a Chris Anderson, I think he says there's no big hits anymore.
Okay, last point.
I think the issue though, doing that is smart, but then what does Starbucks mean? And I think that's what they have to watch out for. As long as they're in the quality section, okay, it's still quality and you can find ways around the expensive costs and maybe not other options. But if they don't watch out, I mean, I guess you start diluting the brand and then you don't know what that is. Right.
So I got a great T-shirt in Saigon.
Right.
It's a Starbucks logo, only she's wearing a Vietnamese bamboo hat, a conical hat, and it says "cafe" in Vietnamese on the shirt. So they're already knockoffs in Vietnam.
So the point is here is very important, right? Don't lose your North Star.
Yeah.
Right? Very important. Again, future that has happened, you identify important, but North Star, where is your North Star? That's such an important part, okay? Okay, let's move on here. Out of this one. Some bring you back to one step back to the more concept area. We're talking just incremental improvement. Here, situation like that, Starbucks might say, we keep our assumption as a coffee, and then start some research on the market. Okay? Once you have research, let's prototype make some new service or new product. And then change your position. Key here in this model is you still work with your domestic logic assumption. Okay? But change your position. Change or right or left. Okay? Up and down, you can do that.
Research you're doing, market research?
Market research, right, yeah, right. Okay. So this is very familiar, you are very known this one. But next slide, we just show the essence of design thinking. So I said I go very quick to design thinking. What's the difference from this thinking and then design approach? Same format here. What designer do is, first of all, come up with some questions, whatever question. How to, say, for example, initial question might be, how to improve customer experience with Starbucks? Simply, right? And you start from that question and do research. Research here is using interviews or just primary research or secondary research or future scenario analysis and other parts of it. The key is here, from this research, you get customers' psychographic aspect. It's not just average customer. It's not just marketing study using hundreds of thousands of data. Even one person interview, deep interview, to get psychographic aspect. Get something out of that. When customers get excited, when does it about coffee, going to coffee store. It's not necessarily that you those data from marketing. So market research, you want to say millions of data and then do some statistical analysis and then get some right answer from there. But here, it doesn't matter how many observations. Just get 1, 2, 3 interviews. Get something out of the story, psychographic aspect. All right? They get insights from there. All right? Deep insight. Once you get insights, then you sort of synthesize. Key here in assumption testing. Key here is through this insight, your question may be somehow misread. Say we ask, say, Starbucks how to improve customer experience. But your framing question might be very different. Starbucks wants to improve sustainability. What is the solution? That might be reframing question. Because if the psychographic aspect coming out, one customer says, I'm so excited about sustainability, and if we don't have to spend all this throughout all this capsule, I'm so happy. If one interview get that, and the Starbucks says, oh wow, that's one of the most important sort of insight. Sustainability, how to innovate our sustainability. Then customer engagement. That's totally different framing question, right? So that case, we make, but again, key is this is not the linear approach. If you come up with that kind of framing question, then maybe go back to research and get an insight. Eventually, you got some prototype out of this. Again, non-linear process. It's not just you have research and then come up with prototype. It's not the case here. We work teams. We get some deep analysis, deep research, and then get the people's mind, psychographic aspect, and then discuss, talk a lot, and the reframe question, and then test the assumption, and then assumption does not sort of verify. So you may go back to again research, and then say closer.
I have a great example. Starbucks actually did this in Redlands with their store.
Okay.
They proposed to take over a 1960s drive-in. It was the original Baker's drive-in that had been a hamburger place and a taco place. And they were going to knock it down, but they realized Redlands really values, like Claremont, old historic buildings. So then they came back with a proposal to restore it, and it's now a really popular place in Redlands, and they're doing like old car shows. And but they found out they couldn't restore it. There wasn't enough left. They actually had to rebuild it from the ground up. But by capturing Redlands' value on and especially this modernism trend now of 50s and 60s buildings being popular, they went from being sort of an enemy of the city to very well liked. So that's at the store level, they found a way to do that. Now you're talking about the product level.
So you're talking about not just coffee, you're talking about
experience. What people wanted was to be in a historic building and have that sense, and yet have the new product and then not the old product.
Okay. So this is a kind of very quick version, but the key is this is not just doing marketing research, but go into much deeper psychographic aspect of the customers, potential customers, or human beings. We use that as an insight, and then brainstorm with a team, and then come up with new ideas. So new idea part is another aspect I just want to. So this is kind of the typical design thinking process. There are many different versions. This is one of the versions developed by the Arthur at the University of Virginia. And there's 4 elements. This is a research area. You go to the more psychographic aspect of customers, mind mapping, journey mapping, what if brainstorm, and then concept develop, assumption testing, rapid prototype, and then launch the product or service quickly, and then get the reaction. And if it doesn't work, move quickly again, go back here. So what if part? Let me just look at. This is a project we did for KPCC, our lab using KPCC, and we did this together with our Center College of Design. KPCC has a traditional customer segment that use age as any baby boomers ages. And the question for them was from 5 years, 10 years down on, where is our main customers or listeners? At the same time, federal funding is shrinking. So the KPCC question is how to find paying customers. It's a public radio station. They're looking at how to find paying customers. That was a project we did. So this is a very tough question. It's not just design, but also strategy question. So eventually, this team come up with new idea, which we got bronze medal for idea, sort of one of the most prestigious design awards in the United States. So this is a kind of illustrated process. First, very deep interview listeners, interview with staff, and then generate sort of somehow summarize all these results. And also at the same time, we spend at least 50 hours of future scenarios to look what is the future look like. As Peter said, it's important to look what has already happened. We're not predicting. Peter said, don't predict the future, because anyway you get wrong. So don't predict the future. You should know what has already happened. So we spend lots of time on that. And once you got all these data, then we did some insight. What can we see from those data? Again, very sort of tedious process. Once you get sort of insight, then brainstorm, get the new idea, as many as possible. Okay. Once you got ideas, and then you combine that with business model or strategy. Here we put ecosystem, but what is a partner? What is a partner you want to work outside of your industry? What's going on outside of industry? It's very important, right? And at the same time, what is the scenario? Particular users you think is very important. What is the story behind those users? Write down the whole story from 6 o'clock in the morning, 4:30 in the morning, till end of the day, 1 week, 1 month, 1 year. What is the story of the new users? Okay, so there's a very important detailed analysis, but also very important part is what we
Question.
Just-
Is the generative tools, is that where you capture insights from people who are not listeners?
Yes,
Okay.
right, that's it, yeah.
Okay.
Because that's also important. You don't listen. Why you don't listen? KBCC. Young people say, "Wow, they don't perform music. They just tell us all the stories about news." So young people basically ignore KBCC. I want to listen to music while I commute. That's very important information, right? So, but KBCC by definition does not sort of run all these musics and other things, right? So then what we do to attract those customers, that is this part. Okay, so these are very important part. The other things which is very important, again, this is Drucker, it goes through to Drucker codes. If you ask Drucker about anything, he spent 1 hour, 40 minutes going back Middle Age Europe. Going back to 1600 in Japan, and he's talking about, and finally comes back, and then everything is. Somehow in that spirit, this is also designers do quite often, very useful. Think about particular product service in the past, when the new product service came out. What was the main users? What was the value proposition? What was the new meaning they provided? What was the technology and business model? Quick example, like a TV. 1940s, black and white, 1950s, black and white. And then came color TV. Yes, that was a big change, right, from black and white to color TV. After that, what happened? High definition TV. Okay, let's get it clear. Then what happened?
Large screen. Bigger.
Bigger. So bigger means now there is what is the value and new meaning? Bigger TV. Yes, it's big. As you can see, big. Okay, so that's
Theater experience.
Okay. Then, so go
I
ahead.
was gonna say, the progression from 3D TV to eventually virtual TV.
Right. Then eventually Japanese companies started computing thinness of TV. 10 millimeter, 9 millimeter, 6 millimeter. When I sort of consulted the Panasonic, and I told, what are the meaning of you guys doing of this thinness? And engineer said, well, it's great to show the customer how we can do it. Is this a user proposition? No, that's almost below of the engineers, how to make TV thing. This gets more like a paper.
I contend that it was a space issue. The old TVs were big and bulky, but a thin TV you could put on the wall like a picture.
Okay, so that purpose, yes. But once you see this, how thin is, this thing is from here to here is big shape, right? But now they compete like this. So at that point, they basically realize that that's wrong.
But then you also generational change. People are watching more on this rather than sitting in a big screen.
Right.
So it's individualized rather than everyone watching the same thing, everyone watching something different.
So it's important again, this design thinking that designer quite often uses this historical perspective, how product service changed over the year, what are the meaning they provided from supplier side as well as the customer side. Technology is very important here too.
To his point, it seems like the high definition and the size was to increase the realness of experience, and now people are going virtual. So they're getting rid of the screen altogether, and they're getting these, experiences
Reality,
that
right.
it's set and you can look all around. And it seems like that's
the
meaning.
Right, so that could be the future, could be totally this story here, right? Future could be new meaning, new.
Well, and it's current. I mean, people.
Current, yeah.
Currently, yeah.
Life cycles are much faster in my opinion. Things go up and they go down much faster. So something that was big in a hurry can go away just as fast relative to say the adoption rate for radio or for television.
the opposite happened with cell phones, where everything started to get smaller, and you realize they can't see anything anymore.
Yes.
So I had to go with the bigger one.
It's the same thing, right? So the size game.
The nice is the
company-
iPad out, this,
Right, right.
I don't need my iPad anymore, this is big enough.
Yeah.
The tablets then
So
drop.
this game, part of the game, has different meaning as Steve Jobs came up smartphone.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what I'm talking about. Right. That meaning and the size game has different meaning. All right. So I'll just go to quickly to two more slides up here. All right. Every company has this moment, and probably everybody has this moment. If you have not done, do this exercise. What if exercise? It's one of the key components of design thinking. I care, what if our customers simply furniture themselves? I mean, traditionally, because the key is that traditional assumption was furniture store assemble your furniture, right? Circus ride, Canadian circus, or music entertainment. What if there's no animal show instruments? Cost goes down very quickly. We don't need feed animals. Elephant costs very expensive. Tiger costs very expensive, dangerous, right? So circus ride realized that. Okay, we forget all this and we don't need that. All right, Tesla, this is a very big one. Eco car is sexy and diamond. Leaf, it looks like an eco car because they design. Okay, this is an eco car, so it has to be eco. But Tesla is totally different, right? Whole Foods, supermarkets, restaurant, bar these days. You go to Whole Foods to meet people or drink. Thermal mirror. We used to have all the thermal mirror here, but one by one replaced by fake thermal mirror. But then thermal mirror. What if office furniture is beautiful? Very good. Made in USA and beautiful. That's very important. It's not made in China, but it's here and then beautiful. McDonald's most recent change. If breakfast served for lunch and dinner. Logic, mainstream logic, breakfast should be served in breakfast time until 10:30. That 10:30 was sometimes very important kind of point. Like, oh, at least 1 minute, 2 minutes. That was what they changed. All these things, right? So this kind of exercise you can do very quickly. What if exercise is one of the key components of the design thinking. First one is a psychological aspect, but this is important. And finally, I just give 2 slides. Somebody know this person? Okay, that's normal. How about this person? Somebody know this person? No. Okay, that's normal. If you know these people, okay, it's something different. Still nobody. This some of the CD, Santa Clara Design, Pasadena graduate. He was sitting Aston Martin board, famous was James Bond car. He designed Aston Martin DB9, BMW's a very successful design, very novel. He's a graduate of Santa Clara Design, Pasadena. He worked on GM and Volkswagen and Mazda. That was his CV. He designed this car. He had a factory company, Anaheim Hills. He designed this car. Okay. So what happened to this guy? Left. The company bankrupted. He received federal funding, subsidy, but he couldn't deliver. He was a great designer, but he, from my perspective, didn't have much strategy. His customer, only customer was Saudi Arabia. Why people Saudi buys this hybrid? That's, I don't get it, but Saudi has lots of those oils, but why do you have to buy them? Anyway, and leadership, not quite sure. He was good into suing other people as well. But that's probably design, right? This side, we don't know him. He's a designer. He designed this car. He designed Tesla 3. Also, he's because the chief of the designer for Tesla. By the way, the Henrik is a Danish. He's from Denmark. And then Franz, is a very German name, but he's American, but his parents came from Germany. So everybody knows this person. So key here is, yes, design is important, but it's not that all. You have to have other things to be successful. Fisker's case, strategy, grading, probably B minus C. Innovation, probably B plus, A minus. Leadership, not quite sure. Even before execution, they disappear. Tesla, I don't know how you grade it, but Tesla strategy looks like more Porter's differentiation strategy. Target, high-end market, highly differentiated, high price, high cost, eventually. Innovation, yes, definitely innovation. Leadership, whether you like Elon Musk or not, there's some innovation. But the most important part, and everybody here knows, most important part of the business at the end of the day, execution, right? Even you have a great idea, you have great leadership skill, you have great innovation, and execution. Finance, operations, right? Making things and deliver distribution. That's the nuts and bolts part at the end. That's very important. All right, so it's just already 5 minutes after 9. So my point is, yes, still Peter Drucker's all these work of innovation, work of the future that has happened. Very important. Please do not ignore or forget all those things. But design thinking, new approach. Key is finding the deep insight of the human being's psychographic aspect, and then always challenge the dominant logic and existing logic. What if? It's very important. Just keep asking what if. What if this happens? Okay. But at the end of the day, yes, execution. Don't forget execution part. And everybody here is very, very good in execution, agree. And so that is still very important part. So that's just why our Center College design sending students to us every year 565 students. Because they would like to know execution part, leadership. That's what they need as a designer. So design thinking is new approach to us, but old approach to design school. But for us, we can take into how to use that approach, very important, but still basic business to idea, thinking future really matters. Right, so sorry for being 5 minutes over time, but I just stopped here and hope this is your first and last session. Hope you're coming back to Drucker School, and we are happy to see you all around, and it's very important for us. And thank you very much for your attention.